Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
This episode is brought to you by Adio, the AI-native CRM built for the next era of companies. Connect your email, and Adio instantly builds your CRM right before your eyes with every company, every contact, and every interaction you've ever had enriched and organized. With Adio, you can build AI-powered automations and use its research agents to tackle complex operational processes like finding key decision makers and triaging incoming leads. Join industry leaders like Flatfile, Replicate, Modal, and more. Head to adio.com/topline and you'll get 15% off your first year. That's attio.com/topline.
Hey everybody, it's Topline 111, our 111th episode, and today we've got a very special guest. Obviously, you know me, Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, AJ Bruno, CEO QuotaPath, and Asad Zaman, the CEO of Sales Talent Agency. But today we've got Eric Simons on the phone, and Eric is the CEO of Bolt. It's one of the fastest, it's one of these AI products that is just at a torrid growth rate, one of the fastest growing SaaS products ever, from 0 to 40 million ARR in just 5 months, with 5 million signups and profitability on a sub 20 person team, which is absolutely amazing. It runs entirely in the browser via web containers, eliminating cloud spin-up lag and slashing infra cost. Industry observers call Bolt ChatGPT level velocity for software creation. So we are talking to somebody that is in the business of shaping the future. Serial scrapper at 19, Eric famously squatted in AOL's Palo Alto offices for 2 months while bootstrapping his first startup. Actually, he raised $20,000, so it wasn't completely bootstrap. He wants to make that clear. And I believe recently, but you'll tell me when, recently just finished a full Ironman after not even having run a marathon ever before. Did I get all of that accurately, Eric?
Yeah, that's all about right. The Ironman was in October, so it's been a bit. I'm not in the same, VO2 max range I was back then.
VO2 max is one of the best predictors of longevity there is, according to this guy I follow on X, Dan Go. Are you in the 50s for your VO2 max?
I need to check. Spend a minute on the drop off was hard after completing the Ironman, so I got to go back up. I just did the Big Sur marathon like a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, maybe at this point.
So it couldn't be that bad of a drop off. You're still running marathons.
Well, there's kind of it's like there's a huge difference. So I think I feel like what it takes to run a marathon is a lot. To complete a marathon is a lot lower of a bar than I think most people realize. It's like if you're trying to get a really aggressive time, then it's hard, right? But if you're trying to complete, I'm doing the San Diego marathon this weekend with just a handful of friends. But it sounds insane. But it's but you're just people are drinking.
That's a ridiculous thing to say. I'm so unfit these days. I'm running a marathon on Sunday, ran one on Tuesday.
Look, it's chill. It's because if you're doing a 4.5 5 hour range, it's not you can have fun and you're just kind of going at a not that you should do zero training for or whatever, but it's the bar is a lot lower I think than people realize to just complete one of these things.
Austin,
you barely leave your house, so I get it.
I ran 2 miles on Saturday. I came home, I was like, Sherry, I'm a gangster.
You did it.
I did 2 miles.
You did it. Sam, what's your VO2 max?
I don't know. It's 46, so it's not that great.
It's not that bad either. That was a little humble brag. You're 50 is great. Minus 46.
No, I mean, I've got friends that are in the 55 range. So, and I've run a bunch of marathons, and I will strongly disagree with Eric that it is easy and pleasant, and every one of them I've hated tremendously. So I am humbled to be in your presence, not even including your ARR growth. Asad, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, we're going to talk about, Eric, you obviously Bolt is an exceptional company, a story that has been told a couple of times over. And so we're going to do something different. We're not going to talk about the product as much because there's some great places where you've done that. People should go listen to your podcast with Lenny. It was fantastic. What we're going to talk about is building this business, which is, I think, an area that others haven't clicked into and is really interesting. I think we want to talk about pivots because I think there are a lot of takeaways related to pivots in your story. We want to talk about product market fit, competition, and then how do you prepare yourself to be able to run this type of marathon that business building is. Let's start with the pivot. So you started this business in 2017.
Yeah.
Right? And by 2023, you still hadn't found it yet, to the point where your board was pushing you to just sell the business, move on, try something else. This isn't working. And fast forward a year, almost a year, less than a year, October 2024, you launched Bolt, and within 4 months, you go from $1 million to 40 million in ARR. What a pivot, right? Yeah. And our ecosystem has a couple of these legendary pivot stories. Yours, Instagram, is one where they'd raised a bunch of money. They were trying to build something else. It wasn't working. They had a little bit of money left. And they're like, hey, we like this. It was a very different idea. Let's have this photo sharing app with some filters. And it took off. And so what we find are that there are founders out there that are trying to find the idea and are wrestling with it for years and years. And they're just tinkering and they're wrestling with it and they're trying to find it. And sometimes the advice they get is just let it go, try something else, put a new team together. Something's not working here. But then there's stories like yours that from 2017 to 2023, it wasn't working. And then now look at you. What have you learned about pivots? If you went back in time, what would you do differently, or what advice would you give yourself around this concept of trying to pivot and find the thing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And like, I think all things considered, I think we actually, I wouldn't actually, I wouldn't change anything about how we played our hand here. Because it's just, startups in general are it's a game of probability, just like a sales pipeline, right? Like if you want to go and close $1 million of sales, there's like your pipeline, it's like your top of funnel cold calls, or like you have 100 of those, maybe like 20 of those take a second one, of those 10, are actually warm, and of those like 3 close, right? So, but it's a pure game. You couldn't just as a salesperson be like, I'm going to talk to 3 people only, and then just expect to make $1 million this year, right? And entrepreneurship is the same way, where it's you're dealing with probability. And so it's a lot about just how fast can you iterate, put things out there, get feedback, learn from it, and then decide what the correct course of action is based on that. Oftentimes that's just iterating on your current product and trying to continue to make it better. But then sometimes there's like okay, we need to like burn this thing down, kind of like a prairie fire, burn it down so that we can kind of grow something new out of what we learned effectively. And so I think like, when I first came to the Valley, so I started the company with one of my childhood best friends. He and I have been building stuff together for 20 years now. So we learned how to code when we were 13, and like so we've been building stuff together.
That's a beautiful story. You're like 20. How old are you?
33. Yeah, so literally 20 years since he and I learned how to write PHP in MySQL or whatever in my parents' house, and so a lot of the things that have ever worked for us meaningfully were things that just we actually wanted to use and solve the problem that we actually had. And I think it's like very easy to, especially if you've like raised money and something's not working, it's very easy to like fool yourself into thinking like, oh, I want this and I need this thing, and like, and other people need it. And then, but really it's kind of this artificial thing, where you're trying to make something work, but it's just not the market mapping, the product market fit just isn't there. Right?
Do you have a view on when a team should let it go and move on, try something else, maybe put a new team together and just start completely from scratch, like leave this thing, versus when they should keep tinkering, keep iterating and try to find it together? How do you make that decision of which one to do?
Yeah, it's hard, right? I think it's like, it's useful to like the job of the entrepreneur, right, is to turn over every stone. Because I think like, especially last year for us, it was, we were talking with our board at the end of 2023 about the next year. It's like, listen, if we can't figure something out, to make this a real business, we need to start spinning it down or whatever.
Real quick, just for context, so everyone knows, because this is pre all this growth, what was your board configuration at that time? Like, who was your institutional investor?
On our
Yeah.
board as a board advisor, and then or board observer, excuse me, and then Tom Crane of Insight was our voting board member. And Albert and I have control of the board, so it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like we were necessarily going to be forced out of our jobs, but at the same time, like, we're operators, right? Like, we've taken capital, we've taken this deal, and so like we have to do what's in best interest of all the shareholders and employees. And if this thing's like, if we don't see a clear path, we have to be realistic about that.
And
Right?
I
What
said
was,
this
what
on the
was
show
the
before.
original? What was the original your premise upon which you raised money?
Totally. So back in 2017, the story kind of starts actually when we first came out here. We'd had the good fortune of bumping into Dylan Field as he was just starting Figma, and so we got to see that story play out, which is the premise of how Stackblitz started out, which is effectively like the first pitch at Figma was not a design tool. It was just this like a demo of a 3D ball dropping into water in a browser tab. And the pitch was, okay, browsers have become very powerful. You can now do complex graphics rendering with like WebGL in their case. And what that means is like you could build a new type of rendering engine that ran in a browser that then you could build a design tool around and bring design to the browser, just like Figma brought docs and email and things like that, right? And that it was a classic like browser-based deep technology play. And they spent the first couple of years of Figma building just that rendering engine and then building the design tool around it. And obviously we know how that story's played out at this point. And so back in 2017, we saw that same story starting to play out for web development environments, right? So like, because it's kind of weird, like you actually, like every major operating system or platform comes with a built-in development environment. Like Microsoft has Visual Studio, Mac has Xcode. The web has nothing, despite being the most ubiquitous platform. You cannot build web apps in your browser, right? Like using your browser. But there were some new APIs that landed in browsers. We were like, okay, theoretically, like you could go and use WebAssembly shared memory and this and that, and like write a micro operating system that boots inside of your browser in like 100 milliseconds. There's zero latency because it's using your CPU and your memory, but that would be huge because setting up in dev environments is the hardest part of like one, learning how to code, but two is just an experienced engineer. It's a huge time suck, right? And we could bring full stack development to the web in the same way that Canva did and Figma did for design or whatever, right? The challenge, and so when we built the first 3-4 years of the company, we were just building that technology, which was like very like no one had done it. We were talking to the browser vendors, and they were just like, "We don't think you're going to be able to do this." We got it to work. We were like, "Hell yeah!" Right? Like we did it, right? And so the first product, that technology though that we built was wrapped with a IDE like VS Code in the browser, and obviously targeting developers. And so we ended up finding, over the couple of years after that, from 2021 to, end of 2023, is like developers didn't have a huge need to leave their local environments and use a web-based tool. And therefore, developers thought what we built was really cool. They used it for light use cases like prototyping and stuff, but was not something they would pay a lot of money for, right? And so that was the challenge is we have to be a venture scale company. And so, at the end of, before we launched Bolt, we had gotten to 0.7 million of ARR, right, after 7 years or whatever. Because that was kind of the original vision, and so in a sense, like Bolt is.
How much had you raised, by the way?
At that point, we had raised, so we raised our Series A in 2022. We raised our seed in 2019. So like, total raise before Bolt was like 29 million, and we still had, over half the money in the bank before we even launched Bolt. But it was really just more, and this is like, again, if you view startups as taking as many shots on goal as possible, like how fast can you iterate, how fast can you learn, before you have product market fit, you want to extend your runway as much as you possibly. You don't want to be burning money, right? Which we did a great job of. Like we were well capitalized, we were not at risk of running out of money. But it was like after 7 years, it's like, okay, well, we can sit here and just slowly burn down the money that we've raised. Potentially just going nowhere, right? Or at some point we got to pull the plug and go, okay, we should sell the company or whatever, and explore that path, right?
It's interesting, Eric. You're because we share insight as an investor, and I bet you were having similar conversations we were having in maybe a different way, which I think Insight for us has done a really great job of just being like, look, it's your company, but at the same time, like time value of money, how much longer do you want to be doing and banging your head against the wall? Were those type of conversations, like, is that what you felt and at the end of 23, 24 a little bit?
Yeah, more or less, right? And I think, and I like the Insight guys are like, they're a New York based firm, so they have like a New York style of, brutalist reality check, right? which is why I enjoyed it. And Tom Crane's a brilliant guy. And it was a good like, I think for us, I think Albert and I were also pretty tired at that point because we're, it's like, it's confusing to be 7 years in and you climb this mountain of like, no one had built this technology before. And, okay, but, kind of the product that it enabled that we first built didn't make sense, or, it did to the degree where we could actually build a venture scale business. So Albert and I were not like opposed to like the idea of spinning the thing down. But what kind of became clear though to me was like, okay, I will feel, it's still a bitter pill to swallow, but kind of the reality check is like, okay, well, the only way I would ever walk away from this and feel like, I feel regret is if we didn't go and turn over every stone we possibly could here. Right. And when we had been trying to like make that specific product where we were like, okay, if it's like holistically as a company, we need to go and we need to like, we need to burn the prairie and just try completely different product orientations that will best leverage this technology we've made.
Was there some foundational connection to the original idea still?
For sure, right? Because again, the whole really the core thing that we wanted to build, was effectively what we wanted when we were 13, and everything we've built since then is like, I want to be able to come to a web browser and build actual full stack web apps that have a backend and Stripe and whatever have you, right? And our web container, the technology we built, is key to enabling that. But really all Bolt was just a different product and interface to that technology, and obviously heavily uses the latest in generative AI and code gen, to make that experience possible. But it was effectively the same vision. It's just the orientation of the product, was tweaked.
How big is the team, in the period from 2017 to 2023? And I guess, to the point of like a conversation about being an operator, how do you manage your week, your day, as you're searching for years on end, looking for like the thing that's going to be the wedge? And I ask that because there's a lot of operators today that are in exactly where you were, maybe without the great technology, but where you were in 2022, 2023, where they are confronted with the reality that, and it's sort of to the point of Acid's question, capital's going away. Maybe it's not going away super quick, but it is going away. And they have to figure out like, what is my mental state that I need to be pursuing here? How do I manage my day-to-day and my week-to-week and maintain the right level of energy and confidence and ambition, but also try and be realistic? Like, what was that like for you over those 6 years?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's definitely like a up and down sort of thing, as the case with entrepreneurship. I think the times where I was most effective is when I was doing active measures personally to level that stuff out, right? Because the problem is when you have these pendulum swings, which would be natural to do if you're just kind of hanging on to the roller coaster. The highs are high and the lows are low. And the problem is, especially in the lows, you can end up in a default state of inaction and just letting things drag on far longer than they need to. And that's a problem because, again, it's all about how fast can you just like get up, iterate, you probably get punched in the face, but learn something from it and then just go get back up and do it again. So
the high doesn't have as much like lasting power as the low does. Like a person can stick in the low for a lot longer than they stay in the high. For sure. Yeah. It's like when you put something cool out there, the number of likes and retweets is great for a day or whatever. Yeah.
Right?
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then it's like oh shit, wait a second. Like this is some transient.
Am I a loser? Like, am I silly? My ideas don't work. Like that part stays for weeks and months.
Totally. And so a lot of it like is you have to, I think that you have to sharpen your own blade personally to be really good at this stuff. I think you have to, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people I've talked to that I look at and tend to be reliably good operators, at least, right? they are pushing themselves as hard, if not harder, physically. Like they take their physical health and their mental health extremely seriously. And that doesn't mean that they wake up and like, I need to be physically fit, but they go and they seek out like painful things to do. And you kind of train your brain into just like embracing pain, embracing discomfort, where it's like first thing in the morning, you're like cold plunging or you're working out for 2 hours or whatever, and et cetera, et cetera. And that just kind of level sets you for all of the challenges that you're going to face throughout the day. Right. And there's physical benefits. There's also, psychological benefits that come from that. But to me, like that was like, there would be no Bolt if there wasn't me also going and gearing for an Ironman last year, like the sort of like, humbling, daily humbling that comes from doing that sort of thing, and having to reverse engineer an outcome that is extraordinarily difficult in a short period of time, all the way back to today. And like, you have to work at it for 6 months. Like it's one of the same, like preparing for an Ironman versus preparing for a major release,
Over this period, you've learned this lesson about, I need to push myself physically. I need to torture myself physically to be able to handle the torture of building this company, basically. But along the way, you must have had some moments where you landed up in a low, right? And we've all had it, where you like start questioning yourself, and you have these like really negative thoughts, and it takes away your ability to create momentum. And then inevitably we've along the way figured out how to get out of it. What have you figured out that has, in terms of how to get out of the low, if you do land up in it?
Yeah, perhaps the most important thing, because it's about building momentum, right? And the hardest part of building momentum is the first steps you take, right? Because they're hard, and you don't want to do it. And for me, it typically starts with something small that you're doing, but you're being consistent about it every day. And so that could be going and standing in your shower on cold for 2 minutes to start the day, right? That could be, my number was like 15 minutes for a workout. Like everyone has 15 minutes. You can say you're busy. You can say this, it's bullshit. Like everyone has 15 minutes. You can go and do pull-ups and push-ups or run on a treadmill or whatever have you. And here's the thing is like, most times I'd be at the 15-minute mark and I'm like, I don't, I could go to like
do a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. Because once you're doing it, then your perspective is completely changed. Right. But you have to give yourself, like when you're in the starting phase, you have to give yourself something where it's like such a small commitment that it's obviously doable. It's like, fuck it. I don't want to do this, but I'll do it for 15 minutes. You go and do it. You tick the box. And there's something extremely, powerful psychologically about that, because you're going and forcing yourself to do something that you don't want to do, that's good for you, that trains you to have discipline. And, again, just kind of, it level sets your perspective on what is pain and what are, because a lot of things you stress about that when you're in the lulls, you're depressed about something. It's stuff that actually, if you just go and push forward most of the time, you'll just make progress, right? Like it's you'll end up stuck on something that's really not that big of a deal, right? And of all the things I look at,
because when you're stuck, everything feels 10x, right? Like every little comment on any little thing, you go into a one-on-one and you feel like somebody has a little less belief in you as a leader in your company, and the hangover of that is 10 times more than it would be on a good day when you're feeling momentum. And so it is hard. What have you learned about team morale management, let's say, because you're controlling your volatility, right? You've figured out how to do that. But now you're 2017 to 2023, you've got a team, and every few months, you're like, we're going to do this thing different. This is the idea. It's going to work. Yeah. And then it doesn't work. And you need to keep them excited. You need to keep them motivated. What have you learned about managing a team through that period?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, a lot of it is, if you really invest in just actually, spending time with the folks in your team, and you're having fun just working together on hard problems, it's kind of like if you were going to go and train for, a marathon or an Ironman or whatever with this group of people, every day is going to be painful. right? Like, but people are not going to necessarily, if they signed up to do an Ironman, like, and they're serious about it, they're not going to drop out in training, right? Even on the days that suck, on the days it's hot, the days that they're sick, the days that, you know what I mean? Like, you're gearing up for a larger goal. And so I think that, and so the kind of maybe the lesson there is like, especially when you're in the ideation searching phase, you don't really want to like rile people about any specific idea. It's like, you want to give it all your all. Like, we want to make something that is great for the sake of making something that is great.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not the end all be all. We're here to like, what matters is every single day we're sharpening our blade, and we're doing the best work we can and learning and improving. Right. Because if that's why people are working on stuff, they're going to be much more impervious to like setbacks, which is just going to happen all the time. Right. And those are the people that at an early stage company, those are the people you want working with you, as people that are there to grind and have extreme grit,
Have
and so
you
I think
uncovered a really interesting way to qualify grit in the interview process? Because it seems really important, and it seems really important to the environment you've built. It's like, okay, guys, we're here to build something. There's going to be failure along the way. We're going to stay zen. We're going to keep moving forward. This is the game. How do you qualify if the person has the backbone to be able to fight this fight with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because like we vet for this today still, right? Especially for kind of the stage where we're at, kind of what we're going up against. I think that it's actually not too difficult typically to spot. Like usually it's pretty clear, and I think the hard ones are where it's like, so sometimes it's hard to delineate, like, okay, is this person really down for the grind? But I mean, typically what you'll see is like the sort of people that come into like our hiring pipeline that, one, have worked at startups previously, two, have built their own, projects previously, and it doesn't have to be like a startup. Like some of the guys, the first engineering hires we made, they were doing, they were going and like running workshops, teaching people how to do, cutting edge web development and that sort of thing, but running their own businesses effectively, as sole proprietors and that sort of thing. And they're just looking for cool challenges to cut their teeth on, and are just genuinely like great people. Like the sort of people we hire are not like these like egotistical, like, oh, I'm a macho man, I can take on any level of great. Yeah, I mean, it's like that's usually like there's going to be problems with that sort of personality. What you really want to look for is people that you can have like an honest conversation with about difficult topics, and they're like open-minded. They're not going to just like flip out, etc. Because that's what a lot of this is like people are going to have their ideas get attached to certain outcomes. If those don't happen, people are going to feel a certain way. And so it's like you're working with people that can't actually have a level-headed conversation about reality and how we turn, what we need to do to go and win. It's not going to work.
Is using Bolt a part of the interview process?
Like our new one, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of the people we've hired have actually sent us their resumes built in Bolt and, et cetera. But cool. Yeah.
What's it been like? So we've talked, about the process leading up to this moment of explosion over, the last year or so. But what's it been like since you sort of found, like, describe the moment that you felt like, okay, we found it. And then to the point of there's this whole different series of challenges now that, you've been stamped with the imprimatur of like, you are a world-class company, you're going to build something huge. And how do you keep yourself contained in the right way so that you can pursue the right level of ambition, not get over your skis, but also enjoy this very rare thing that happens where you've discovered something beautiful?
Great question. Yeah, I'm glad I'm talking to you now and not in Q1, because I think because I mean, we closed our B at the beginning of January, and Q1 was like, I mean, so we launched Bolt at the beginning of October, and when we launched, we had spent 90 days building the product, and so what we put out there was like a true MVP. I mean, it's like those race cars where they strip everything out of the interior. It's just like you're holding on to metal and it's just metal. You know what I mean? It works. It proves the concept, but like there's a lot missing. And so once we saw the explosion of demand, we were just, working 24/7 on the product, fixing obvious things in it. But then to the customer support side, like we were like, less than 20 people when we launched it. And so my chief of staff and I were the customer support team for the first like 2-3 months. and there's like, tens of thousands of people, like paid subscribers that were like going and emailing us. Right. And anyway, so that was,
were you sleeping during that time, first few months?
Yeah, not much. And I remember thinking in the first 2 weeks, because I did the Ironman on week 3 of October. And so it had been 2 weeks of Bolt being online at that point. And I remember thinking like, God, this is not the best time to be going and doing an Ironman right now. And then after that, it was like, throughout Q4 and then through much of Q1, I had to dial back on a lot of the, like purely from time allocation side, just the amount of stuff that had to be done. I was not able to actually go and refill my own cup to the degree that I needed to be doing that. The things I've been saying are important. But kind of hit a point where like, we made a lot of key hires, we shipped a lot of key things, et cetera. We're kind of towards the end of Q1. I was like, okay, we're in a good spot here. And it's, we've kind of built out, the requisite sort of, support systems at the company to go and like lead these various things. But it was very challenging, and it still is. I mean, just even now, just growing into the, most companies have years to grow into the sort of revenue scale and customer base that we have. And they have, I don't know, multiples of the headcount that we have. And there's just not a playbook for this stuff.
That's the thing that I think I find most interesting is all the companies that are 0 to 40, whatever, the infrastructure you need just on like the back office and accounting and being a real company. I mean, you had 7 years of some of this already. So the question that you asked, like, oh, this could still go to 0. Well, you're a real company behind it. Do you still say that to the team, to the company today?
I probably don't say like this could go to 0, but like in my head, nothing has changed, I guess, from my mindset. Because I've had friends that are like, oh man, you guys made it. And I'm just like, my honest take is, no.
You're like, shut up, go away.
This is not certain, right? Like this is, nothing here is certain. And, and I've seen other founders that have had, similar sort of, they've had kind of a success tick and then kind of fall into that mindset where it's like, hey, we're now one of these things that people talk about or whatever, and they made it. But I look at him like, this is one, I don't, maybe if I was 19 again, I would care about that sort of stuff. But at 33, I've seen enough of these where it's like, that stuff does not matter. You should not care about it. I do not care about it. And my perspective is like, this space is moving incredibly fast, and that's just true. And we have to be, we certainly must act like, we are under constant threat here, and being extremely aggressive, with the flip side of it being like, we're building awesome things. Like we're having a great time working on this thing. And that's what's going to yield the best products and outcomes, is when you're actually building stuff that you want to use and you're having fun doing with people that you enjoy working with. So kind of keeping that grit of, to go to, again, an analogy to like sporting, it's like you have a team that like wins the playoffs or something one year, that next training season, they should not be, if you want to win again, you should not be, taking a breather and, relaxing and thinking you're really hot shit. You need to go back into that same pain cave you were in the season before, and take the learnings and the lickings you got from the previous one, and the things you did well, double down on those. But you go and, that the next, who wins the playoffs this coming year, who won last year, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like that shit doesn't matter, has zero effect on who's actually going to win it this year. That's kind of
it reminds me of the 21 and 22 and so many anointed unicorns, and looking back to like see where they are today, which they're not unicorns anymore. But we were talking about this last week, like Builder.ai, another insight company that I'm sure you followed really closely. Their founder in 21, 22, 23 was very much all over TechCrunch in the news.
He was living the good life though, that guy. That guy was living the good life.
Yeah. but it feels like things can change quickly and you just never know. So I love the like healthy skepticism that it seems like you have about your own business, which I don't think a lot of founders
I don't think that guy
have.
was putting himself through the pain that Eric is putting himself through, which is really interesting. Like, I think you do see this as when you get a little bit of success and it can get to your head. I have a lot of empathy for success getting to people's head because it's easy. Like, it can happen, right? Momentum. But the building great things does require trying to find a way to keep yourself steady and keep moving forward.
Are you a B2B tech CRO, VP of Sales, or VP of Revenue Operations? Join over 200 of your peers at CRO Summit 2025, a one-day executive-only event designed to help you tackle the challenges of today and position you for growth tomorrow. Hosted at the Denver Art Museum, this summit combines cutting-edge insights and actionable strategies. Learn from industry pioneers covering all aspects of sales and revenue growth into 2026 with sessions from Andrea Kayal of Help Scout, Guy Rubin of Ebsta, Wendy Sturgis of Cleverbridge, and more. Visit joinpavilion.com/CRO-summit to secure your spot today.
One of the things I'm thinking about as we're talking is you went from nothing to 40 million essentially in a handful of months, right? If we look back to this pre-AI phase shift, the best companies in the world were these companies that would grow at the triple, double, meaning that you almost had 4 to 5 years. Best in class was 5 years in, you would get to 40 million, right? And you, as you mentioned, you had that much time to build your team and figure out how to hire and create infrastructure and get marketing right and position all these things. And you got none of that time. The second thing is those companies could rely on the advice of investors and advisors and thought leaders on things to do, things not to do, etc. But you guys, you, Cursor, a handful of these other companies, you guys are pioneering in a way because we've never seen companies grow at this pace before. So many of them, like it's not a normal thing. So it's not like Bobby who's giving you advice on how to do X, Y, Z. You can take it for face value. You don't have as many things to look at, to learn, and then do as other people did. So how do you handle that? Like, I'm sure there's no shortage of people giving you advice. How do you take it in, compute it, and do something with it? How do you make sense of it all?
Yeah. Good question. I think for us, like we've been, Albert and I, have bootstrapped a good number of companies. Like the company we did before this, when we bootstrapped it all the way through the sale of the thing, and that teaches you just like a lot about how far you can stretch a dollar and like how to intelligently place bets on things and how to position yourself. Because when you don't have the backing of, like, and we were broke too, so it's like it month to month rent mattered for us. Like, so we had to get become very good at taking calculated bets and coming with our own sort of like first principles perspective of like, here's how we should go play our hand on these things. And so
can you expand on that a little bit? I'm really interested. When you say like taking calculated bets, how did you think about it? Because I think that's a skill that a lot of people do not have.
Totally. And I gotta tell you, I don't know, maybe some people are born with this, but like, I think that my recommendation to most people is go and spend a year or two bootstrapping a company from nothing, because you will learn so much. You'll learn so much more practical how to build a business than if you just went and raised money and had to figure it out that way, right? Because you can't just throw money at problems. You have to like solve problems. So you really have to, like, I learned how to do email marketing because I was the guy that had to write the emails, right? Like for when we were selling courses at our previous company, I had to learn how to do SEO. I had to learn blah, blah, all these things, right? And the thing is that that's super helpful, because when you actually need to go hire people to do these functions, you've cut your teeth on the things that they're going to have to go and do. So that helps you hire great people, and also just be able to actually meaningfully contribute to these conversations around, hey, how do we connect the dots faster here? And, what are interesting things we can do, right? But that's effectively is, you like, when you're bootstrapping a company, you have to do all this stuff yourself. And so you're not going to make every bet is going to be like correct or whatever have you, but you have to learn quickly. Okay, well, that was a bad idea because X, Y, Z, because we need results immediately. Whereas again, when you have money in the bank, you can kind of, it's not we screwed, it didn't work as well, blah, blah, blah. And like, people don't laser in on the fine grained details, but like a tangible example of like that, when we were back in 2021. StackBlitz was around at that time. We launched this incredible technology that had a lot of hype, and we had investors screaming at us to go and raise more money, go and increase our headcount to 50 or 100 or whatever. And we're not doing any revenue at that point, And Albert and I we were steadfast on like, we're not doing that. Like we are not. We don't think that this doesn't make sense to us, and we may be wrong here. Like we see what's going on with all these companies raising tons of money at crazy valuations, et cetera. We certainly could probably go and do that, and then what? Like, there's kind of a disconnect. Lo and behold, 1 year later, same investors were going, you need to cut your burn rate. And we're like, there's nothing to cut. We never increased it. Right? And so it pays to just be focused, because when you look at the other companies that through that, a lot of them went and got way ahead of their skis, cranked their headcount, then had to reduce their staff, blah, blah, blah. Now we're seeing like, Builder AI, stuff like this, that, it's all coming home to roost. Like these things have consequences. Like when you take these strategic, missteps, that when everyone around you is like, this is a good idea. And these like professionals, like investors and whatever.
Okay, so I have a question on that. So you've been almost frugal in a great way along the way, right? And that has been almost a competitive advantage for you. I remember meeting so many companies in that 2021-22 period, Series B, 120 employees, 2 million in revenue. You're like, what? Like, what are these people? Why do you have 7 people in marketing? There's nothing to market. And you saw what would happen to those companies. So I think it's really commendable that you guys had the backbone to push back on investors and not make those bets that everybody was trying to make, because they want sensible things to do. Now you're in a kind of a different situation though, where you have this really strong signal from the market. We love what you've built. 40 million in 4 months. So now you need to make bigger bets than you've traditionally made, right? Now you need to go after it. How do you change how you calculate what an appropriate bet is? Because you're now at this very different size and scale very quickly. You haven't had time to like grow into that mindset. You have to switch and be like, oh yeah, now we need to make bigger bets because we're in a competitive environment. Other people are going after the same thing. If we're too frugal here, somebody who's really well capitalized with really good technology might eat our lunch. How do you do this right now?
Yeah, totally. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I mean, I just feel like you could have made that same logical argument in 2021. Like, I don't know that the calculus has changed. I would question, but obviously want to hear what you think, Eric, because like, do you need to increase the size of your bets? I mean, just because I remember very clearly in 2021, we raise money. I mean, it's a community. It's definitely not, a browser-based development application. It's like this is a thing with no barriers to entry and no moat. And I was like, I got to spend this money. I was exactly thinking what Asid was thinking, because this other stage 2 company that AJ knows, Sales Impact Academy, was like, they were spending all this money. They hired this guy from Snowflake. I was like, I got to go big. And that was a huge mistake. So I guess, first of all, do you agree with Asid's premise? I would love to hear your reaction.
Yeah. And I think that to me, it's like we had this exact conversation in November of last year after Bolt it was online and the revenue was cranking, because I think to zoom out, it's like, I think the proper way, when you don't have product market fit, it's all about being extremely conservative to extend your runway to get as many shots on goal over as long of a period of time as possible, because time is actually a huge factor, right? Like our main competitor to StackBlitz, the IDE, we have been knife fighting these guys for 7 years, right? And they were better at us than some things and whatever. And it was this whole thing for 7 years.
Can you say who it is now or no?
They seem so. The founders, like, I see a thing of nice guys. So I don't want to like put them on. You can probably Google this and kind of figure it out. But like,
we're gonna look them up and throw them under the bus.
To be clear, they had a great browser-based IDE product. And I can say that honestly, especially now that I don't have a dog in the fight, right? But like, great product, very competitive. They got acqui-hired for parts 2 weeks before we launched Bolt, and because they had they were running out of money, because again, time is a huge factor. You just can't predict how the sands of time will change how you're positioned and the sort of products you can build. So as an entrepreneur, you have to like, before you have product market fit, it is all about optimizing how many iterations you can get and how much you can learn, and how the environment around you can change to your favor based on what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Once you have product market fit, it is a different game, right? And so this was one of the key, and so this is the conversation that we had at the end of November, was like, there's two routes here. We either continue to do this, basically we're kind of treating this like a bootstrapped company where we're like, we're living below our means and blah, 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 we're profitable, et cetera. We could just keep doing this. Or you go big, right? You pull out the blitz scaling playbook and you go big. And the times to do that is when the market size is astronomically large, right? Like it's very clear, monster op, not like a 10 million, $100 million op, like billions, right? And especially, and because it is so big, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to raise money to come after it. And what we had was like the clear data points of, well, are we convinced that there's going to be a big market here? Yeah. Like we're seeing a shitload of revenue come in. We were talking to the people that were using the product and we're like, these people aren't even developers. Like our previous product was a developer product. The most people that use Bolt are PMs, designers, entrepreneurs. Like they're not developers, right? And so it became clear to us, okay, the target market here is not just the developer market. We're looking at site builders. We're looking at design tools. I mean, the market slide on the Series B deck, I mean, this is like conservatively like $200 billion a year of revenue from the existing players on this stuff. And
what's your go-to-market motion? Like, how did you figure out how to allocate the capital? Is it all paid spend? Is it some kind of growth or virality loop? Like when you're thinking about, okay, I want to spend $50 million, like we can spend it. Where do you spend it?
Yeah, great question. That's what we're doing now, Ryan. Like when we launched Bolt, we spent $0 on marketing for the first 3-4 months of the thing being online. It was entirely word of mouth growth. Even today, most of our growth is word of mouth.
That was just virality of product, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, wow.
Exactly. Because we launched the thing with a tweet, not even a blog post, no PR. It was just, we put out a tweet.
Amazing.
That's
right?
crazy.
And it was a damn good tweet. We spent a lot of time on it, actually. Right?
Damn good tweet. I gave it a lot of thought.
I spent and that's the thing is, it's like how
much time did you spend on that tweet?
It took me 2 weeks of like kind of front to back, and then the days leading up to it, that was my job, and I spent 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, just specifically tuning it, getting feedback from people, tuning it, getting feedback, the video we made for it, etc. Wow. But like it matters because in a world of such a short attention span, you need to put something out there that's going to capture people's attention, explain why does this thing matter, so that they have intent to like either like read the subsequent tweets in the thread about it or whatever, and try.
Tell me a little bit about your Twitter following at the time. You were probably very unknown, right? Like did you have a big, like how many followers did you have?
On the Stack Blitz, which is now the Bolt account, we had like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30,000, and we had built that up over 7 years. And again, this is like, as you're building stuff and you're in that like trial and error phase of starting before product market fit, you should always be building a community of people, that are following your stuff, and you're building great stuff. And then, so that's what we've been doing is, we had a lot of developers that, in the web development world, like we were a reasonably known name specifically for professional web developers or something. Even there, we're probably a little bit niche, but we had enough where it was like, when we put that online, we had enough distribution where people saw it, they boosted it, and then bang, it had the kindling. And that's like, I mean, if you look at Stack Overflow is another good example of this, where Joel Spolsky has he was writing blogs, throughout the 90s, 2000s, whatever, had a lot of following of software developers. When they launched Stack Overflow, he posted a blog post about it on his blog. That's what seeded Stack Overflow, right? So it's like, that's always something that you just got to be doing when you're building products, because when the moment comes, you want that distribution channel to initially seed out.
I've noticed this is a trend with this younger generation of founders that's coming out, like the generation that's, let's say, after you, Eric, like the ones that are in that early to mid 20s right now. It's almost like when you talk to them, every move they're making, there's something at the back of their mind, almost subconsciously, that's thinking, how will this do on social? How will this do from an attention? They're so digitally native that they're constantly thinking like that. And it's a different type of business builder, because before it wouldn't be this instinctive skill set in the founders of how do we gain attention where we don't have tons of money to spend. And they they all like are starting off with relatively no followings on Twitter, and they're all going to Twitter. They're starting off there, and they are growing on Twitter at a pace that is really shocking.
Yeah.
There's a AI SDR company, Artisan, I think. Artisan AI.
Yeah.
And you can see he's actually quite a reserved guy in person. When you meet him, he's kind of like introverted, very measured in how he talks. And then you look at his social media, and this guy is like doing hilarious things on. I think he announced that the company got acquired on April's Fool, and just constantly on social media, he's building these campaigns to create attention and energy, and that's driven a lot of revenue for these guys. It feels very instinctive in them, which is interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense too, because like I think that it's kind of the generation after me is the first one that's really grown up with things like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter for sure. But I mean, and I think TikTok is an excellent example of a platform that's so geared towards new creators, because you can be nobody, post a video, and they push that aggressively out to people's feeds. Like you don't need to have an existing audience. So it actually is incentivized. Like it's giving people a way to go and cut their teeth on how do you actually make attention grabbing content regardless of who you are. Right. And I surely, if I was in high school now, I would imagine that I would want to be going viral. Like I think people these kids are making content, learning how to do this. Huge advantage over
and it's actually beautiful that with them the content, it's more about the atomic unit of the content they're putting together, and like that thing, the one thing I'm putting out, will this thing do well in that world without me having a huge following? Versus in the past it used to be accumulating followers, creating more momentum for yourself, right? For these guys it's like it doesn't matter if this one thing is I get it right, it'll do well. And I think that's actually a really good thing.
Totally. Because it's like, I think there's a lot of people will be like, oh, like there's, long form, there's something lost about it. But I think that like the tweet where we put out bold, it's like that conveyed what it was so succinctly that it could have been a full blog post. We started with a blog post and I was like, this doesn't feel right. Throw this out. It's like, we need something that's just going to describe it in a single tweet. And if we can't do that, then that's really on us. Because what do we expect people to, how are they going to repeat this to their friends?
Interesting.
I
have a question for you.
It's very much in the Bezos shareholder letters, like clarity of communications. It's the new like clarity of communications in the new way from a business standpoint. Do you treat like internal comms similarly to that tweet and how you're thinking about it and communicating with your team? Is that a similar work process?
Yeah, funny you mentioned that. So we picked up the Amazon like PR FAQ style product release approach. For those listening that might not be aware, basically what you do at Amazon, if you want to roll the product, you write the press release and an FAQ before you even start writing code, right? Or designing it or whatever have you. You purely have to just write what the press release will say, and it helps so much to start with the launch as the first thing, because then it helps it gets everyone on the same page as you're building. Yeah. And so we were doing that, and then we realized like, okay, actually we need a tweet thread FAQ. Like we're not doing press releases, we're writing tweet threads, and so that's what we would start with. Is we start with the tweet thread, and then what are the frequently asked questions that would happen after it. And we'll I think it's even if we don't get to full fidelity on what that exact tweet thread looks like, it gives you enough of a base where it's like, okay, what's in the lead tweet is what actually really matters and is going to capture attention. So we need to make sure that part of the experience is really well designed and thought through, because that actually is like what people are going to.
If you're picking between two products to invest in, like two, features to build, and you see these two documents internally, the one that you think will do better on social, does that get a little bit more attention from you? Like, is that where you'll push the resources? Because you're like, this is fundamentally a good feature and it will do well on social and get us more attention, etc.
Yeah, I think so. And they're often in line. And so it's some of these things where it's like, especially when you're selling to like enterprise or B2B, which we're doing to a good amount now, some of that stuff won't necessarily get this sort of social pickup, but it's obviously important from a revenue generation side. And we know that's going to be important to those customers. But certainly when we're looking at like the prosumer, if you're doing any type of consumer or prosumer play, the stuff that we have a sense is going to get good pickup tends to be things that people are either asking for or want, but don't even necessarily know that they want, right? And so those things certainly, will get prioritized over others, because it's kind of obvious, like, okay, yeah, like people have been asking for this. This does address those concerns and questions, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
I have a question.
Do people? So it's a browser based development environment. Do you feel comfortable in that case that like the 0 to 40 path is sustainable? One of the things that we talk about a lot on this show is that there's a lot of people talking about ARR that are, it's like POC revenue that they're it's a 3-month POC that they're multiplying by 4 and calling it ARR. And the reality is, like, we still don't know a lot of the retention profile of these cohorts. Like, we don't know exactly how long they're going to stick around. But on the other hand, I would imagine if you're developing an application and then maintaining that application using your technology, that would feel like pretty long-term, LTV, because it's like, well, you're not going to transmit or, you're not going to move to a different development environment. You're going to stay there. So therefore, as long as you're maintaining that application, you're probably going to be using Bolt. Is that how you think about it?
For sure. Bolt is, I wouldn't, it's really, even though it's got a development environment under the hood, when you use it, like to end users, it's a chat box that you can tell it to make software for you, right? So it's effectively like ChatGPT, if ChatGPT could actually make production web applications and mobile apps, right? And so when they come here, it's almost like a lot of prosumers view it like Wix, as if you could actually build not just static sites or something, like real full stack apps. And the way the traditional site builders solve that retention problem is they have hosting built in, right? They have different integrations built in that, if you cancel your subscription on Wix, your website isn't hosted, doesn't have these integrations, then, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's like the same sort of thing that we're implementing, and we're seeing is like, people want to come here and just build stuff and have it online. And then they don't want to leave, right? Because this is where their thing is hosted.
Do you know how many Bolt built apps are currently on the app stores, Apple or Google?
For mobile apps, so the mobile apps is like a fraction of the total. Most of the things people are building on Bolt are like web apps and that sort of thing. I would imagine. So I know that we've got a couple million live websites on Bolt at this point.
Up? Let's go.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see just the amount
insane. Go from where you guys were like a year ago to a couple of million anything out there is quite insane. That's wild.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So to this point of product market fit, right? You've got these naysayers and pessimists in the market that, they'll say something like, even today, less than half of the workloads are not even on cloud. Technology takes a long time to disperse through society. And we are overestimating the pace at which AI is going to change the world. And they make that point, and then they say, and I think somebody from Benchmark had made this tweet, that you cannot value the revenue of these AI companies that are growing at this extreme pace the same way that you can with companies back in the day that were doing the triple, double. This is experimental revenue. It might stay, it might not, etc. And I think you've made a really sharp point around how this does have product market. Like, you can't wait a year to be like, does it renew, as you're in a competitive fight as well, right? Like, you've got the 40 million, you've got this scale. You're like, we need to find other signals that tell us we have product market fit than waiting for a year and seeing who renews. And we need to do that. I think that's a really interesting point. The other risk that you have is actually the competitors themselves, right? So your competitive landscape is interesting. AI has extreme product market fit in 3 use cases: chat, support, and code generation. And what you're finding is that in these 3 areas, the foundational model providers, the infrastructure providers essentially, are coming further and further into the application layer than before. Code generation is an area where they are coming in, right? And then you've got the cursors and you guys and a bunch of these other companies that are fighting it out. How do you view, how much do you care about the competitors? Like, how much of your time, energy, mental space goes into looking at what they're building, looking at what they're talking about, thinking of yourselves in the context of the competitive landscape versus saying, we're doing our thing, we're fighting our fight, we're going to do this our way, let's see what happens at the end of the day?
Yeah, because it's the market we're in is probably like one of the most competitive, probably in the world right now. and so it's, I think it's important for us to be aware of, like, what are the other tools, like, what do they do, like, who are they orienting towards, what does their experience feel like, look like, are Are there areas that they're doing things that are better than us, et cetera? So to that, I mean, I think that's like probably like 10 years ago, I had the realization, like, I think a lot of founders will toil with like competitors and you end up with these like, if you focus on competitors, you just end up with these useless dogfights that often end up just nowhere for you and the competitor and whatever have you. And
I'm
because
on this. Austin and I have slightly different takes on this part, but that's okay.
This is our fundamental disagreement in life.
Disagree. Yes. Continue on, Eric.
I'm curious. Okay, I'm curious to hear your take, but I mean, basically, it's like, and it's not that like competition, like Peter Thiel's like, competition doesn't matter, which I think again to a degree is true, and that should be, I think, is the right viewpoint on it. I think it's important to like, you want to view competition as free R&D. It's free R&D. There's an entire team of people that are trying to go after similar customers and building similar products and stuff.
That's smart.
And they're going to take a whole bunch of bets. And that's awesome because it's like we didn't have to go and deploy capital and resources and focus and time to go and figure out what things actually worked, right? So it's like, thank you for this blessing of knowledge that you went and did and capital you went and burned to go and figure that out. And we're going to learn the lessons from that. And actually, we're going to like taking that, we're going to kind of figure out how to do it better, right? Because that thing was good. All that stuff you did, that sucked. Thank God you wasted money and time on that, and not us.
I think that's the best answer to how to think about competition that I've ever heard.
And I'm thinking immediately of like some friends that are running companies where, to your exact point, they're like, they have the other guys have this feature. I'll just do that feature. That was good. Like that's when I talk to customers, that's the feature people want. I should build that, which to your point, free R&D.
Well, but you get to look at it, and the beautiful thing, though, 100% on that. But what you to even one up that, you look at what they did well, and you go, why is that good? Like, why is it good? And try it in their own product. And then go, okay, how could you even make that even more seamless and even better? Because often you can go and just alley-oop them and release something that's even cleaner, even smoother, even better. And you'll have a better sense of how to market it because you also got to see how they marketed their thing. And you go, well, what did they do good in the marketing? What did they kind of whiff on? Talk to customers and then go and put your thing out. And then people are gonna be going, oh, other competitor, why don't you have this thing? Your version of that sucks, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a free opportunity to get, it's a free iteration cycle you didn't have to spend. So don't just clone the thing. Go and figure out the iteration cycle you're going to do to take the knowledge and learning from that and just, and make the actual better version of the thing. Right?
We're almost at the end of our time together, Eric, but one thing I do want to ask you, I don't know if you feel this disorientation, but I definitely do, that you're watching the pace of innovation right now in AI. You're watching folks like Bolt and folks like Lovable and folks like a million other applications that are redefining, the market in so rapidly that it's like really hard to make any kind of predictions over the next 3, 5, 7, 8, 10 years. What's your take on the place that Bolt will have in the broader ecosystem over the next couple of years? Like, what are you most excited to pursue? And what do you think is going to be the moat that you're building that other people won't be able to attack?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think for us, a lot of this stuff is just becoming table stakes and, like the incumbents have started to wake up and they began shipping things like Bolt, or whatever in their products. Like Figma's done this, Canva's done this. WordPress is like everyone's kind of doing something like this. And what specifically makes us unique from a technical perspective is that we can, like, because of that technology we made, we can run basically anything. Like if you look at Bolt, like you can build not just web apps, but mobile apps, et cetera. And so I think, and again, with like full payments, I did a live stream a couple of weeks ago, just on a whim, showing off, we have this direct Stripe integration. And I was like, let's just build a website to sell courses where you log in, can access a course, you put in your credit card to get it, blah, blah, blah. 5 minutes, end to end. Like from the homepage of bolt.new, first prompt to live site with Stripe, credit card in. And so to me, it's like, I think that we want to build the tool that people are actually building great products in, from idea to credit card in, whether that's startups, right? Like trying to get as many iterations in as they possibly can. Because our previous company, we were selling courses. It took us a month to build what I did in 5 minutes on that live stream, right? Or if you're at a Fortune 500, a much faster way to actually prototype out the next version of your application that's actually real, get in the hands of customers and actually ship it. And so I think in order to do that, you have to be able to actually run and support all these things and have a great agent to do that. And that's where Bolt shines and is just going to continue to shine, just because of the the technical trajectory we've had on this thing.
Awesome. The last question that we like to ask, I mean, you've mentioned a bunch of influences, but when you think about who shaped you, it could be books you've read, could be podcasts you've listened to recently, it could be guys like Peter Thiel, or less controversial figures, whomever you like. But when you think about people that you think the audience should know about, or ideas that the audience should know about, what comes to mind?
Yeah, great question. I think there's kind of like the obvious ones, like in the early 2010s, I and many other people really listened to what, Steve Jobs had to say and the Apple folks about really caring about designing the experience kind of front to back. You look at Elon and his, kind of the approach he takes, the engineering led approach to building, difficult technology and how to bring that to market. I think there's a lot to be learned there. Those are kind of the obvious ones. But I think the especially in the day and age we're in now, though, with AI and what's happening, Greg Eisenberg actually is someone that I would recommend following, because I mean, he's constantly just kind of punching out ideas on different types of AI apps you can build and that sort of thing. But the stuff that I really like that he posts is his analysis of kind of the market and what's going on here, and he's kind of got this view of it's AI is enabling everyone to be a builder, and the existing incumbents are gonna kind of get eaten by the piranhas of all these entrepreneurs that for the first time can just go build SaaS applications basically. So, and that's just like, to me, like one of his takeaways, but he's constantly posting these really well thought out analysis of kind of what's happening here, what's going to happen, and how
there's been a step up in his content post AI. Like, he was always around and he was good.
Yeah.
But as soon as this AI thing happened, he's really like leveled up into this. He's showing people what is possible today and then giving you 1,000 ideas of what you can build using the technology. And some of them are actually really good ideas. Like, there are a lot of businesses that he advises that you can build now very easily that can be really nice bootstrap $2, $3, $4, $5 million businesses, and they're legit ideas. Like, it's very impressive, actually.
Totally. Okay. Yeah, he's just got a great perspective on what's happening here and how individuals can go and do things and have leverage that wasn't possible before, And so I think that's like, it strikes me as very prescient, a lot of the things that you said.
That's great. We'll do shout outs before you leave. AJ, Eric gave a Greg Eisenberg shout out. AJ, who are you shouting out?
I'm shouting out Ashley Stamps-Lafont, our new VP.
Oh, you hired her, right? Exactly.
We hired her.
Where did you find this incredible VP of CS from?
Oh, man, I don't know. Community. Apparently, communities are easy to start, Sam. You don't need any capital, and so people just show up. And so this community brought Ashley out of the woodwork, and we had a fantastic Ann Powell. I will give her a shout out. Ann Powell is awesome. She's an advisor for Quotapath.
My favorite person.
Also very connected to the Pavilion community. She referred her before we even had the posting out. We spent about 25 hours with her.
Oh my
beforehand.
God. And she still wanted to work with you.
I know, it's shocking. I know that, Sam. I'm surprised myself. I truly am. But she's been awesome. And so shout out to Ashley and her first 2 weeks, which have been phenomenal.
Awesome. Asid?
I'm going to shout out a publication called Every. Every.to is the website. As everybody here knows, I've been looking at media a lot more recently, and I'm trying to find media companies that are doing things really nicely. And Every is covering AI and doing really interesting things, like trying to take a model and say, okay, we can make it a therapist, but how do we get it to be the best therapist possible? So testing like 10 different prompts, like, but just, you are Sigmund Freud today. Now here's my problem, like deal with this. And it just showing, I think, striking creativity in all of us in terms of how to get the best out of these models. These guys are doing a really good job of that. But beyond that, the website and the way that they present the content, there's such beauty in there. There's so much thought. There's so much taste. And I've just been very inspired by what they have built. I think they just raised $2 million from Reid Hoffman and somebody else who I don't remember. But they are, if you're trying to learn more about AI, this is one to bookmark.
Awesome. I'm going to shout out my friend Vincent Zhang, who's the departing Chief Product Officer at Dealfront, and he just hosted SaaS on the Beach, the first ever SaaS conference here in Barcelona. And I had a great time with about 40 different founders and CEOs and investors. And one of the guys I got to meet was Chris Cunningham, one of the founding members of ClickUp, who runs their social media program and their YouTube channel. Gave us a bunch of great ideas. And actually, the ClickUp founding story is not dissimilar from the Bolt founding story, Eric. So pretty cool company that also got started in the Valley. So those are my shout outs. Eric, thank you so much for joining us and being so generous with your time. Congrats on building an incredible company and for persevering, and hope to see you out there on the track at some point running a race.
Likewise. Heck yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.